Hi, everyone. Well, welcome back to Authors on the Air. I'm your host, James Latwell. And today with us, we have New York Times bestselling author Lisa Black. And Lisa's new book is Not Who We Expected. And it just came out this week. And Lisa, it's amazing. I really loved it. Congrats on that.
Well, thank you.
Now, it was fun. And if I'm not mistaken, this is like your 17th novel.
I think it's the 19th, actually.
19th? Yeah, things just kind of get, math is not my, forte here, but no, but one thing I really appreciate about your books are the way you get into character. And this was no exception. I mean, this is, I think, the fourth book in the Locard Institute series. And, Ellie and Rachel, they have a great dynamic there. So how did you come up with those two as these two primary people operating this institute, and how did you come up with them as characters, because they really counterpoint off each other very well?
Well, I approached this series for the first time as a series. My publisher wanted a series, and you know how it is with writers. Usually how it happens is we write a book, and then the publisher likes it and says, okay, let's write some more and make this a series. And then you're like, okay, now how am I going to carry this? So for the first
Exactly.
time, I actually sat down and thought, I have to load these characters up with enough backstory and enough rounding out of their lives to be able to use them through a whole series without
Hmm.
them being not that interesting. So I gave them kind of pretty full backstories. Like Ellie was orphaned at 4 and raised by a series of aunts and uncles who were all wonderful, but it was a lot of moving around. So this way I could give her experience in different areas of the country with different types of personalities. And she's got a whole host of resources. One uncle is a security consultant, one cousin is a news reporter, one you know anytime she needs like outside information from somebody, she's always got a cousin she can call, which is very much like my actual life, except for the being orphaned part. And and then Rachel um has a very stable background. I mean,
Hmm.
was a family of 4. Her father has passed away, and she had a kind of ne'er do well younger sister. Was very much, the obedient older sister, the
Right.
intellectual like Rachel, always did everything right. And then you had the wild younger sister who was always going out partying and giving her parents gray hair.
Yep.
And as an adult, this younger sister had a child, and then a year later was killed in a shooting and a drug deal gone wrong, which was just wrong time, wrong place, or so it seems.
Hmm.
That just complete accident. So Rachel is raising her adorable toddler nephew. She lives with her mom, so her mom can take care of the baby when she's at work. And she loves the Locard. She's given it years of her life and helped to make it what it is. And the only fly in her ointment is the baby's biological father, is a deployed soldier. So she worries that he could some point come back and ask for custody because he could legally do that. And even him, he's actually a really nice guy, and he's an army demolitions expert. So somewhere down the road, I plan to use that. And then the Locard Institute is, well, what my publisher wanted was a jet-setting pathologist who works on cases of the rich and famous.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. Such an animal doesn't exist, right? I mean, pathologists work for counties. They don't get to
Yes.
pick and choose what glamorous cases they want to work on. So I came up with the Locard, which is 1/3 training
Hmm.
for law enforcement, for forensic specialists, for students, for anybody who wants to go can go. Because in the forensic field, which is what I still do, I work full time as a latent print examiner in CSI. So much of our training is postgraduate, is continuing education. So we have these little 5-day seminars throughout our career, and that's very important for keeping up our certification. So it's a world I'm very familiar with. And then 1/3 of the Locard is research. All these professors are doing their own research in the different areas that's under their expertise, like, document examination or DNA or entomology or whatever. And then 1/3 is private cases. And there I could work in are rich and famous. I could send them all over the country. For example, in this book, Ellie goes to Nevada. In the last book, they came to Florida. So, coming to Florida from Cleveland, I got to use the whole kind of fish out of water thing because Ellie had lived here for a while with another aunt and uncle, and so was familiar with the Florida climate. And Rachel had never been there, and she's like, these horrendous summer rainstorms, and she's like, "Is this normal?" Ellie's like, "Oh yeah, totally normal."
Oh yeah.
So, but with that third, which the private clients supplement funding for the other 2/3, is how the Locard works. So that way I could kind of have everything all in one place.
And it really works. I mean, you can put her where you need to, in terms of Ellie getting out in the field. And this is a series that people can pop in, like if they haven't read the Locard series before, if they pick up this one, they're not missing a beat. I mean, it's a fully contained story, and you kind of weave enough of that backstory in there to know, how this is influencing their actions on the page. So I thought that's hard to do sometimes with ongoing series like that, and how much do you leave in and how much do you skip. But so this time Ellie and Rachel find themselves kind of in an unusual position, searching for a missing woman. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Not Who We Expected.
Well, the Locard is tasked with they meet a rock star, an aging rock star. I mean, think like Mick Jagger, like major rock star. But his band broke up, and he didn't really find the success as a single. And now he's also got significant substance abuse problems, and he's trying to stage a comeback. That's going to be his big, comeback as a solo artist. So he's got a lot writing, and his daughter, he has one child. His daughter is, just a very sensible, down-to-earth Yale student. She took a summer off and went to a career development program at this ranch. And, great, except she never comes back for, like a year and a half. And at first they're in contact. She calls every now and then. She sounds fine. She likes it there. But gradually it just gets less and less until she's fallen out of contact in completely. And her boyfriend, who she went there with, turns up dead in a nearby city. So that's why Billie Diamond is the rock star, and he hires the Locard to go check on her. He just wants to know that she's okay, but he doesn't want to show up himself because he's a huge celebrity, and then it becomes all about him, and he doesn't want, he wants his daughter to know that he trusts her, and he wants to give her space to find herself, and plus he's also preparing for this concert that is extremely important, and so you kind of wonder what's a little more important to him. But so he wants the Locard to go out there. So Ellie basically goes undercover. She just shows up at this ranch and says, I want to be a client and take these, career development courses. And then she's going to scout out looking for his daughter at the same time. Rachel stays in Washington, D.C., to be her contact and to get more information out of the rock star. And it turns out he had been friends with, why he hired her was he was friends with her younger sister, Isis, the one that died with the baby. And so in this book, we learn a lot more about what was really up with Rachel's younger sister and how that affects things.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on in this plot. Very intriguing. I don't want to give anything away, but when Ellie shows up at this career development ranch, it's not exactly what she thought it was going to be walking in. And how did you research that kind of environment? I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
that's
okay. We
yeah,
could say it turns out to basically be a cult.
right. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, and I got hooked on learning about cults. I think I read The Road to Jonestown,
Mm,
and I was judging a best fact crime contest at the time, and I read that, and I just got fascinated.
mm,
And I think everyone is fascinated with cults in a way because you always think, well, how could you fall for that and
right.
stay after the wild things they always wind up doing? Not always. There are cults that are not not harmful, um, but relatively, when you always wind up with that much power concentrated in one person,
Yeah.
it can always go awry. And so I just started researching cults, which is fascinating. And I read tons of books. I watched documentaries. Um, a favorite way to research, a favorite and easy way to research is, just free Amazon Prime documentaries.
Yeah.
You kind of have to weed through a lot because there's a
Yeah.
lot of weird stuff out there, but even YouTube videos,
Hmm.
anything, just, so I just started researching cults, and that's what I didn't want to make it a religious cult because that's just done to death.
Hmm.
And so I made it a combination basically of Scientology and Nexium.
Yep. Yep.
Because
And
both of those they start out, their focus is development and success, and
right.
having all the areas of your life go really, really well, and that all sounds wonderful, and we can all use a little career development guidance. So
Yeah.
so that's why I created it like that.
No, and it fits perfectly for that setting. And we mentioned earlier that the characters, I mean, they really drive your stories. That's a thing that I do appreciate about your writing. But we've talked about Ellie, we've talked about Rachel, but even the supporting characters that you have in this book, I mean, really stand out. I mean, they're well developed, they're fully fleshed. I mean, when you're talking about Galen or Devin or Angela, um, I mean, you get a sense of who they are and why they're there on the page. I mean, how do you approach that? Because not everybody can pull that off.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I always thought characterization is like one of my weaker points as a writer. Um, that's a good question, and I don't know how. I know, I have an idea of them in
Mhm.
my mind, and then I just didn't, like any human being, when you're describing them, you just focus on what about them
Right.
illustrates who they are in this story and what they're doing and what their goals are.
Yeah. Because there were a few passages that I was coming across, and one of the characters would be doing something, and you just get that little cringe feeling, like, oh, they're up to something. So, yeah. So no, it was fun. It was really a fun read. Now,
Good.
kind of changing, tack a little bit here. I mean, and you've mentioned it. Your background as a forensic scientist, and you're involved in crime scene analytics and all that kind of thing now. How has that influenced the way you write? Because I mean, it's a very smart book. There are a lot of really great details in here, but it's not done in a way that just breaks you out of the story. It's like, oh, okay, that's why this is happening. It's really well done. But how how does your background influence the way you put a story together?
Well, I'm looking for things that I can use in the book, basically. That if this happened, then there's characteristics I need to describe, and how those point the character to finding something, like like the direction of the little apparent gunshot pellets that
Hmm.
she sees.
Hmm.
You can tell a lot from just the shape of when a bullet strikes something, what kind of shape it makes. You can, you know, you can tell what direction it was going in. You can kind of tell the angle. You can kind of tell how big or small the projectile was.
Yeah.
And so I find ways that I can use those things, but I always have to remember that I'm not writing a textbook. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't
right.
want an info dump. You don't have to know everything about ballistics, which I don't. Um, to be able to illustrate this particular plot point. So it's kind of picking and choosing what I need to describe and keeping it to as much of a minimum that will still make things clear.
Yeah, I think you did that. It's given that a little bit more texture of the story about what's going on in that scene, like the shotgun pellets that you talked about. That made a difference, in the story as it turns out. So that was very cool. So what are you working on now, Lisa?
Well, I'm going and taking a slightly different tack. I'm trying to write something a little different, which is always dangerous. And it's actually it's a book about an active shooter situation. And so it's basically a thriller.
Okay.
And my character is in an office building. It takes place in an office building, just a regular old office building. There's a bunch of different places in it. There's an architect, there's a dentist, there's a hair salon. And she's going to the court reporters to do a deposition, because she is still a forensic scientist. I can't get away from that. And all of a sudden they're sitting in the waiting room and with these 3 strangers and a receptionist, and they hear shots. And basically this shooter has blocked the exits and turned off the elevator, so they can't get out of the building. And so the whole thing becomes this little band of people who don't know each other trying to avoid him and find a way out at the same time. So,
wow.
It's
That
just,
sounds,
I don't know, it's been rattling around in my head for a long time, and I just wanted to write it.
I like the idea. It sounds intense. Like you said, it's going to be a heck of a thriller. No, I'm looking forward to that. We're going to end up with something we call 3 quick hits. And I want to put you in Ellie's headspace. Okay. And I'll just ask you 3 quick questions. And, what would Ellie say? We'll start off with what is Ellie's favorite music? What does she like to listen to?
Rock and roll.
Okay.
Pop rock.
Pop.
Not
I could see that.
Or anything like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. How about her favorite drink or cocktail? What does she like to drink?
Vodka.
Okay. And how about Ellie's greatest fear?
Falling? Off a cliff or off a building? I guess, or being tempted to fall off a building. Yeah,
she's out there, that's for sure.
That's weird, I know, but
so folks, we've been talking with Lisa Black, the award-winning nominated author for Not Who We Expected. It's her latest one. I highly recommend it. Anything Lisa writes is a dream. So do yourselves a favor and go pick one up. Lisa, thanks for spending some time with us here on Authors on the Air.
No, thank you.
Thanks. Take care now.
Take care.